School will be over in a few hours. Students are ready to depart for home. After 5 months of work, the second semester of the 2017-2018 academic year at the University of Cape Coast is over. But not all students will leave immediately. The reasons are many. Samuel Abogazigli is one of such students. Known as Pablo, he needs to confirm a complete assessment score at the College of Humanities and Legal Studies. Else, he risks repeating a course the following year. Samuel has a battle to fight. Section 6 of the Disability Act ensures public buildings are friendly. But this is not the case. Samuel has to get to the second and third floors of his faculty. The 25-year-old faces a huge challenge. Wheelchair users at the University of Cape Coast are challenged.
Right, so that's, a plight of many persons with disability. This morning we've been joined by Alexander William, who's member of Communications Committee, Ghana Federation for the Disabled, and ICT lecturer at the University of Ghana. We've also been joined by Adam Abdul Wahab, National Communications and Media Relations Officer of the Ghana Federation of the Disability Organizations. Good morning, Adam Abdul Wahab, and good morning, Alexander William.
Morning. Good morning, and good morning to listeners as well.
How are you all doing?
Oh, we're all doing fine. Doing great by God's grace.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us. So we just heard of the story of, Samuel Zigli and how he has to struggle every day to actually, use facilities at the University of Cape Coast which are not disability friendly. As a federation, it's been more than 10 years, Delang. How does it feel knowing that the very thing that was supposed to have been done for you hasn't been done for you?
Okay.
Yes, William.
Okay, so, as a federation, having different persons with disabilities, it is still disheartening because when the disability movement actually advocated the enactment of a law on persons with disabilities, was it our expectations that all matters pertaining to persons with disabilities in relation to challenges were going to be over and out the window? No, that wasn't a realistic expectation of the federation. But at least what we wanted to see was a more systematic and consistent approach by the general public and government to deal with the substantial challenges of persons with disabilities in Ghana that serves as barriers for us to fully and effectively participate in mainstream society. Almost 12 years down the line, after the passage of the Persons with Disabilities Act, and the 6 years down the line after Ghana ratified the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, we have not seen Ghana as a whole, be it public or private citizens, actually make any serious efforts, and I mean serious, consistent, and systematic efforts at dealing with the situation of persons with disabilities. Let's place on record that yes, some things have been done, but they could only be referred to as pockets of events and activities seeking to deal with some scattered needs of persons with disabilities. Taking Samuel's case particularly into consideration.
Yes.
Samuel is a person with physical disability. The University of Cape Coast could have made a more consistent and better effort at ensuring that Samuel and the likes of him have a more physically accessible environment. So the University of Cape Coast could ensure that all drainages are covered, they still operate with open gutters all about campus. They could have ensured that once they have admitted Samuel as a student, the school would have a policy that any course in which Samuel will be a participant, the classes or lectures for that course must be held at places that are accessible to Samuel. But they have not done that. Samuel, according to the story, would have to try negotiating with some of the lecturers. It goes beyond, just the University of Cape Coast. You listen to the story, you realize that even commercial vehicles and vehicular terminals at where Samuel would have to traverse also do not seem to be sufficiently accessible to wheelchair users. And it goes beyond wheelchair users. When you look at our means of transport, you ask yourself, so if a person with hearing impairment, for instance, gets on board a bus that is calling out the various spots, how does that person communicate or actually receive information as to whether or not he's arrived at his destination or not? I mean, we need to ensure that we are all making this approach. The greatest challenge has, first of all, been with the fact that almost all of us as Ghanaians have thought, it is a thing for the government to do. When we say the government, then we are actually referring to the various ministries. But it goes beyond things that the various ministries should deal with. When you look at Section 6 of the Disability Act, it's framed in a particular way where access to buildings are concerned. It says all buildings to which the public has access. All buildings. So whether it is privately owned or publicly owned, once it's a building to which the public has access, that building should be made accessible.
Okay. Let me get to Abdul Wahab, because I believe you've been dealing with government and the implementing agencies. What has been their response to these concerns that we all have? I say we all because we all would want to ensure that those who are persons with disability are taken care of in this country.
Thank you very much, and thank you to your listeners as well. You see, to be honest here, it has not been so much encouraging with regarding to respond of duty bearers in addressing the issues pertaining to the rights of persons with disability, especially that of accessibilities. Sometime engagement with some duty bearers will even tell you that they themselves at the forefront do not have better understanding of persons with disability or situation relating to disability. Let me just give you an example, but for one reason or the other, I may not clarify where exactly that thing happened. In one of our engagements, we spoke to one duty bearer, and the response he gave us was that, yes, for me, as far as disability issues are concerned, I have done a lot because I have a brother who is a person with disability and he stays in the house. I make sure that I provide him what he needs. Here, this tells us that the person just understands issue of disability on the charity base. The person is a person with disability. Therefore, what I can only do for the person is to get something for him to eat or live on, and I have done a lot. But we have forgotten that accessibility, as we are talking about, is one of the most important things in the lives of persons with disability. If accessibility is limited, it affects our education, it affects our health, it affects our employment, everything, even the businesses that we do, it affects everything. Because if a person is employed in a building that he cannot navigate freely, the person has to go to the health center to access the health service where the place is not accessible. The person is to go to school like Samuel's case, where the buildings are not accessible. Let's send our minds back to 2016, thereabout. We had an engagement or confrontation with one minister. That was Minister for Education, about the community day schools that were being put up at the time. We realized that those that were sponsored by World Bank was actually having facilities for persons with disabilities. But those that were sponsored by the government of Ghana didn't have any provision for persons with disability. And the response the minister gave was that she felt persons with disability could have their lectures at the down floor, forgetting that ICT center as well as libraries were at the top. When the
exactly, but so if your class is at the top, what do you do?
You see, she was thinking that okay, they should program such that all persons with disability, maybe they could stay in the same class for the whole of the academic period in the school. But engagement, as we are talking about, we continue with engagement using different strategies. But the response to me is very limited because we have different perceptions about disability, and that shape our understanding about issues pertaining to disability differently. I think that has been one of the challenge. So now, law enforcement agencies, for example, like the police, we ask ourselves, how best do they even understand disability themselves? And the law that we have enacted, what are the knowledge they have about it? How do they help to enforce that law?
Okay.
So it is about knowledge. It's about the capacity to work in the sector.
Okay. Well, that's part of TV3's mission, and of course, we're also helping on 3FM, and supported by Star Ghana with funding from EU, Danida, and UK Aid. So, William, I mean, yes, we have this problem. It's been more than 12 years. Listening to Abdul Wahab, even speaking with persons in authority, shows a lack of understanding of your issues. What are you doing differently, and what would you want to see being done for you now?
So 2 questions. What are we doing differently?
Yes.
So the Federation is actually seeking to enhance its opportunity to influence policies, because at best that is what the Federation can do, seek to influence the kind of policies that the government brings up or government drafts to ensure that they are disability inclusive, and again to continue the advocacy on raising awareness about the need for government to or the general public to pay attention to the needs of the of persons with disabilities. Additionally, what the Federation is trying to do is actually put together some legal resource entity that would basically make use of lawyers who are concerned about the plight of persons with disabilities to take cases on pro bono basis for us to begin to test the laws in our courts in Ghana. Because guess what? The laws exist. They are not being complied with. And there are oftentimes persons with disabilities whose rights are infringed upon by various citizens and the state do not have the capacity, that's by way of finances, to actually take these matters up in court. We have been at advocacy for quite some time on these matters, and we feel it is time for us to take some of these issues to the courts. There is a reasoning. The reasoning is that, of course, when individuals begin to realize that these acts are actually punishable, and punishments have been are being handed out to people that are infringing on the rights of persons with disabilities one way or the other, institutions will begin to act better. So when you take Section 29 of the Disability Act, for instance, it does speak about commercial vehicles ensuring that they reserve at least 2 seats for persons with disabilities until such time that the bus is about to take off, and then there are no persons with disabilities, then they can afford to fill those seats. If indeed the law courts were able to sanction drivers who refuse to adhere to this, and then the penalty in the law is actually for such offending drivers to pay 600 cedis. So if the police and the relevant authorities were beginning to ensure that this was being done, it would go a long way in giving people that deterrent that would ensure that they are on the right path. Those who put up physical structures, if they begin to feel the pinch of the law, they would seek to adhere. What else can be done? I think that for all citizens of Ghana, we should, and it is for us to know that we all have a role to play. And I mean a more comprehensive role, not the charity-based approach. So if you are a private establishment, you ensure that the policies you deal with, your workers that handle people, they have knowledge on dealing with persons with disabilities appropriately. These are things that you can easily learn if we are so minded to do.
Okay.
But just to complete my statement.
Yes, go ahead.
But if we do not take the matter seriously, we will not arrive at the point where the environment is convenient enough for all of us to live in.
Okay. Abdul Wahab, finally, our time is up. Finally, we need to be wrapping it all up. So, William, you talked about, for instance, when you go into vehicles and all that. And I see a question. So, the law allows you're giving for two. Do you pay for the other one, or it's given to you freely?
Oh, sorry. So, actually, both of them ought to be paid. Anybody getting on board ought to be pay for the space. So, whether you are coming on board alone or with your aid, you pay for the seats.
Okay.
But the only thing is that the owner of the vehicle or the driver of the vehicle should ensure that you have access to the space.
Okay. Abdul Wahab, finally, what would you want done?
What I think should be done is the implementation of the law. If we try to enforce the law and the law is being implemented, as Alex put it, and we begin to punish people who contravene the law, I believe that issues of disability will be addressed appropriately. For example, contractors construct rules that are not accessible for persons with disability to navigate freely. Gutters are not covered. There are pillars all over. If we begin to look at these things and then make sure that our accessibility standards are also implemented, I'm sure the environment will be accessible for all persons with disability to be part of society.
Thank you very much, Abdul Wahab, and thank you, Alex William. This is Mission TV3, and is supported by Star Ghana with funding from EU, Danida, and UK.